Hello, friends. Welcome in. Happy Saturday. Welcome into the It Gets Better channel. It's been a minute since I've had the opportunity to be here, but I'm excited to be back. Everyone in chat, it's good to see you. Hello. Kat, welcome in. Callie, hello. Is it Sacha or Sasha? Let me know so I can say it correctly, but welcome in. Tofi, hello, welcome. I think I said hi to everyone, but it's good to see you all. I hope you all are having a good day. Um, it's been a minute since I've been on the channel, which means resetting up all the tech. So if anything, audio wise, if my microphone sounds weird or anything like that, just let me know. But yeah. Hello, friends. Hi, Toast. My Saturday is going well. Oh, I haven't really done anything yet. We went and got our coffees. Well, I don't really get coffee. I get tea. But we went and got our coffees. I drank that. I set up for stream. Not all the good things. Watched some of my friends' streams while I was vibing, doing my makeup and things. But yeah, good vibes. I get the is it a strawberry green tea refresher from Dunkin'. I never thought I would be a Dunkin' girly. I was a Starbucks person through and through for so long. But my partner is from New England, so I've been converted. Strawberry dragon fruit, yes. It's like half a strawberry dragon fruit like juice concoction and half green tea, and then they like mix it, and it's very good. It's very nice. It's a lot cheaper than Starbucks, so honestly, I'm not mad to be converted, to be honest. But I was surprised. And Sasha, okay, perfect. Thank you for letting me know, of course. Of course. I need to try Dunkin'. Honestly, it depends on if you like coffee or you don't like coffee. I feel like if you don't like coffee, then I feel like the drinks at Starbucks are better because there's a lot of really good, like, fruity and sweet, like, they have, like, their blended drinks and things like that. Starbucks is definitely more bougie, that's true. But Dunkin', if you like coffee, is, like, better coffee, from what I've heard from coffee drinkers. Starbucks is known to be a bit bitter, their coffee, and they have to cover it in a lot of sugar and nonsense. So I think it just depends. I love coffee. Yeah, then I would give Dunkin' a try if you haven't. I've heard good things from the coffee drinkers in my life. By the way, if any of you are new here, if you don't know me, my name is B. I use they them pronouns. I am a queer and disabled variety streamer over on my own channel. You can do ! queerlybee if you want to see the information about me. I was a It Gets Better ambassador last session. So I did spend about 6 months on the channel previously. So if you want to get to know me more, I did a lot of sessions where I was talking about kind of my own personal experiences, my own queer experiences. But this session, this next 6 months, we're going to be doing something a little bit different, which I'm very excited about. I'm going to be doing sort of a presentation on the research on a queer subject, and then have a panel of guests come and talk about their own experiences. So I did that one time on the channel for last session, and I loved it. It was my favorite session. So we're doing that for the whole 6 months this time. Thank you for the pronoun party, friends. My pronouns are they, them. If you feel comfortable and willing to share your pronouns in the chat, then you are encouraged to do so, but of course, never expected, never required. Thank you. She, they, very good. Hello, Puffs, welcome in. Happy Saturday. Yeah, so I'm gonna slide over here actually, because We've got a lot to do in our short time together, and I'm excited and I want to make sure we get into it. So, today's subject is talking about working as a queer professional. So, if you maybe are already a queer professional, maybe it'll just give you some insight into others' experiences, tips, tricks of the trade. And if you are maybe looking into like your first internships or your first post-grad job, maybe it'll give you a sense of reassurance, hopefully. Hopefully. So I'm going to start with some research that I did on the subject, because I'm a bit of a little nerd. Actually, I kind of already introduced myself, but here's the hello page if you'd like to see it. And we're going to get into some of the background research. And I wanted to say before we get into it, that sometimes talking about like the statistics of queer experiences can lean in the direction of more disheartening, I guess. It's hard to look at like the challenges that our community faces like head on. But just to encourage you to stick out for the panel, because we're going to be talking all things queer professional experiences, and that includes queer joy, and the positive experiences that we've had being queer professionals. So, it's everything out there is not bleak, I promise, considering my own experience as a queer professional has shown otherwise. But I'm glad that you like my nerdiness. I kind of missed, I don't know if anyone else who like graduated from uni or like does work where they don't get to do research anymore, but like I miss like researching queer subjects and like sharing that with somebody. So I said, here's my excuse, we're gonna do it again. But yeah. So the quote says, for decades compared with the general population, the LGBTQI plus people have faced increased risk of experiencing economic insecurities. And some overarching themes of the research that I found were that the pandemic, which we're still currently going through, has disproportionately affected LGBTQ plus people and perpetuated some of the inequities that our community was facing prior to the pandemic. And that a lot of LGBTQ people are working. Like you'll see later that the stats show that we work at an equitable percentage with other communities. But a lot of times the jobs that we're able to get are like lower quality jobs, and not in terms of, sometimes people are kind of negative towards certain types of fields, and not low quality in that way, but low quality in terms of like protections, in terms of wages and things like that. In 2021 was the first year that they actually included the questions about gender and sexuality in the household pulse survey, which I don't know about you, chat room, but I think is ridiculous that it took us until 2021 to question that queerness might play a part in the working world. But okay, but all right then. Right? Like I don't know, that kind of blows my mind sometimes. I spend a lot of time online, and sometimes I see things like that and I'm reminded, because I work online, a lot of my community is online, especially during the pandemic as a disabled queer person. And sometimes I see stuff like that and I'm like, yes, I have to like get out of my little bubble and realize that there's a lot to still be done. So it's a good but also harsh reminder. Yeah. It's a bit of a whelp. It's a bit of a whelp. Yes. So some of the things that they found that the pandemic impacted our LGBTQ community was that LGBTQ folks, households were more likely to live in poverty by 20%, and that 38% of LGBT households struggle with paying for their regular expenses. So I know in my personal experience, my partner and I are both queer. I'm also disabled, and we struggle a lot a lot on a regular basis, with like living very paycheck to paycheck and always trying to like shuffle money around, like small increments of money to make things work. And like anytime we come up against like a payment we didn't anticipate, it can be very detrimental to our budgeting and things like that. And I say all of this to say, like, you know, I'm not just spitting statistics at you. Like, this is my lived experience as well. And if it's your lived experience too, like, solidarity, solidarity, my friends, because it's not easy. And clearly, like, 38% of our community is struggling with this. So, yeah, you're definitely not alone, and it is not your fault if you are struggling with these things, especially if you share, like, if you have any other marginalized identities that you're living with as well, or if you're part of the transgender community, these statistics increase even more. And yeah, the stress is a lot. It, like, the financial burden of that experience is very impactful on your mental health, very impactful on your relationships. So yeah, definitely. And then the other category of topics that they kind of talked about in the household pulse survey was just the labor market experiences of LGBT workers in general, beyond just the pandemic. And what was found was that LGBT people work actually more and at higher rates than most communities. Our employment rates are very high or even equitable with other communities, but the quality of the work is lesser, and we struggle with job security. So like actually keeping the jobs that we are able to maybe get our hands on, because of like, you know, microaggressions or like straight up biases, experiences we might have in the workplace, or not being able to present as ourselves, etc., can all affect whether or not someone's able to like maintain a job that they're able to get their hands on. And Kat said, true, not everyone has that safety net or that generational wealth if you're queer. Exactly. You know, I can't, my parents like didn't have a lot of money growing up. We lived very similarly to how I live now, which I just expressed to you. And so my parents aren't really able to help me. I think I've asked my parents for money like twice in my lifetime, and they've given me like $100. Which is not nothing, you know, some people don't even have that, but just to say, like, you know, not everyone has like someone they can fall back on if something kind of goes awry. And some queer folks don't even have a relationship with their family, so even if their family does have money, they don't have access to that as well. Some of the recommendations that came from the research is that they encouraged more additional research on the LGBTQI plus employment experience. Obviously, you know, the job market right now, surprisingly, it's only been like 2 years, but I feel like the job market right now is really different from what the job market was in 2021. Like, the pandemic has had lasting and current effects on how hard it is to get a job right now. Like, I don't know about you all, but I know at least like 5 people in my immediate circle who are struggling with layoffs or unemployment or job hunting, etc. So I'd be curious to see like how these stats have been affected in the more current day. They also suggested, obviously, the importance of making existing anti-discrimination protections more tangible and encouraging workers to be able to do collective bargaining, and then building programs and pathways to good jobs for LGBTQI plus folks. So I used to work at a organization for low-income first-generation students and help them build the skill sets and the community resources needed to like get into university that they might not have in their families. And it's similar needs are in place for like LGBTQI plus students who need help like navigating these systems that are not necessarily built for them, and helping them find good jobs post university or post high school, etc. Another major subject that came up in the research was the experience of coming out in the workplace. This quote says, "Although society has made many strides in queer acceptance and visibility, coming out at the workplace is still sometimes a risky task for many LGBTQ plus workers." So like considering how many, like how on TV they kind of present coming out as like you're gonna come out once and then it's done. But anybody who I know who's queer knows that it's kind of like a false narrative. It's more like you have to come out a little bit to different people every day for the rest of your life, in different scenarios that you come in. And you have to make choices about where you feel comfortable and safe doing that. And the research shows that the workplace, especially a new workplace, can be one of the more delicate and higher stakes places where you're trying to decide whether you feel comfortable or safe to come out fully in that space. And how a lot of workplaces technically prohibit employment discrimination, but legally it's very difficult to prove that you have been discriminated against either in hiring practices or in the work environment. And so if those like distinct protections are not in place, then even though in all technicality it might be unallowed, you might not actually be able to protect yourself in a tangible way. I live in a progressive area, in a progressive field, but even I've had clients try to get me fired after finding out I was a lesbian, let alone trans. Yeah. They can always say things like not enough experience or another candidate did better. Like there's a lot of ways for them to really easily cover up what is actually, discriminatory. No, this is not an example of queerness being used in that way, but I was on a hiring committee once where one of the people in charge on the hiring committee essentially said they didn't want to hire a candidate because English was their second language. And I remember pushing back on that immediately, being like, that doesn't necessarily mean that they wouldn't be good at the job. They have all these good qualifications, and the person was going to essentially sell the reason why they wouldn't pick that person as they wouldn't be able to connect with the students. So even though the real reason was that that person had English as a second language, which is obviously discriminatory, it's easy for these hiring like managers and people in HR and things to hide what is internal bias behind like a cloak of something else. Good news, I didn't let that happen. That person got hired because they deserved the job. But, point being, that is, it happens to this day. And it happens in ways that people think are even... They think that they're doing something good, but they're not, is the best way. Like, the intentions aren't to be biased, but sometimes the impact is still, although sometimes it is just very direct and obvious. But which is why it's so important for companies to also think about their interviewing practices too, which I feel like they don't think about as much. It's true. I remember when I was on those panels, like a lot of times it was just very random people selected who like volunteered to be on these committees, and there wasn't a lot of consideration for like making sure that these were like safe people who understood bias and like were gonna check themselves throughout that process. So hi Silky, welcome in. And then a lot of the forms of discrimination that people face in the working environment is like microaggressions, which can also make it really hard to seek out support in those experiences because you don't necessarily think that people will take them seriously because they're not like these, major in your face negative bias experiences. And then one of the things that they talked a lot about was trying to figure out in what spaces you felt comfortable disclosing your queerness, whether that's in gender or sexuality. And there's like this discussion of economic and social safety of being able to hide your queerness, which of course is a privilege that not everybody can do. But you know, if you can, like, some people consider hiding their queerness in a working world so that they can make sure that the safety of their job is secure. Because as we saw earlier, um, LGBTQ folks work at a consistent level with other communities, but our job security is not consistent. Um, Slim, welcome in. Thank you for the follow, friend. Welcome into the It Gets Better channel. And then, like, you have to consider that, weigh the pros and cons of that safety and security with like emotional well-being and your psychological well-being, right? Going into work every day, having to hide an important part of yourself, as much as it is a privilege that you're able to do that, and not everybody is, it's still very harmful for your mental health. I'm sure anyone who's gone through that can attest to the fact that, you know, having to be inauthentic to yourself every day, if for example, if like it's based in gender, like you might have to be dysphoric every day trying to do your job, trying to do a good job, working on whatever you're working on, while people are misgendering you the entire time or using your dead name, etc. Hi Momo, welcome in. Thank you. Yeah. And we talked a little bit about, chat kind of brought up hiring discrimination. I remember watching like a TikTok recently that can give you all maybe like an example if you've never seen or experienced it. Is like, there was a lovely like human talking about being stealth, which means like he was a trans man, but he didn't want anybody in his working world to know that. So to everybody there, he is able to exist in the world just as a man, although trans men are obviously men, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like, they don't know about his transness. And within his first week working there were other folks in the, whatchamacallit, like factory, who were making fun of a previous employee who was outed as trans man. And so now this person who is living stealth in their job knows that this environment that he's in is not a safe environment for him to come out in, and he can never feel comfortable, you know, fully being 100% himself around those people. And he doesn't feel probably even comfortable connecting with them in a working environment. And you can think about how like negatively that impacts someone's mental health as they're trying to navigate just their day-to-day working experience. So those can be the kinds of things that you have to consider when it comes to disclosing whether or not you are queer in a working environment. They also talked a little bit about gendered expectations in the working space, in job descriptions, in roles, in how people's interpretation, you know, like an example I see happen a lot is if a femme presenting person in the working environment is, you know, exhibiting signs of leadership, a lot of times they'll be called like bossy, or pardon my language, like bitchy is something that a lot of people will say. And if a male presenting, mass presenting person does those same actions, a lot of times it's like, oh, like pat on the back, like good leadership, like look at you go, kind of thing. And so that can be an example of many of like gendered expectations in the working world and what that kind of like looks like. And then the last part, which I thought was really interesting because I, you know, identify as like a educator, was this role of like having to play the unpaid role of educating in your work, even though that's not part of your job description. Which I'm sure some of us have experienced. You know, for me, a lot of times it was part of my job description, but sometimes it would tend to go above and beyond. So I remember when I was working with low income first generation students, for example, our our boss was a white woman and not very well educated on these topics. She knew a lot about the first generation experience, but not anything else. Really, when it came to our marginalized students and the intersectionality of their lived experiences. And so sometimes the things that she would say or assume about students in terms of their work ethic or their consistency or whatever things she was kind of harping on at the moment, it would wind up becoming this thing where myself as a queer and disabled person would have to advocate on behalf of the queer and disabled students in educating her on why she was wrong on how she was treating them and her understanding of their experiences. And similarly, my co-worker, so it was a 3-person office, was a Black woman, and she would often find herself having to do this unpaid role of educating on behalf of the BIPOC students and expressing the ways in which bias was coming into play and how those students were being treated as well. And so there was this unpaid labor that both of us were asked to do because our boss was uneducated on topics she should have been educated on in order to be working with marginalized students. At one point, we actually stood up for ourselves, which I was really proud of us both together, because our university that we worked at would often have these free sessions you could go to learn about subjects. And my coworker and I would always, let's say her name is Sarah, just to ease conversation. Sarah and I would always go to the presentations, even though both of us were very well educated on marginalized issues, just to see if we could learn anything new, just to see, we're, both getting older. Sarah was even, a couple years older than me. Maybe there's updated information that we don't know. So let's just go see what we can learn. And our boss would never go. And then when we would come back, the boss would want us to essentially give them the important information from the sessions. And we were like, you know what? No. If you are we don't mind teaching you some of our personal experiences that maybe you aren't going to get out of a formal session, but you need to do the base work first. So show up to the session, listen, get the base understanding, and if you have further questions, we are willing to help you learn more, but you're not going to ask us to do the work of teaching you the 101 parts of it, I was constantly doing this at my previous job. See, exactly, and you shouldn't have to do that. You shouldn't have to do that. Do the works, folks. Exactly. Google first is a useful tool, and then if you have further questions and you know someone well enough, then fine. But other than that, no. We're not your first line of defense, My chat is being a little funky monkey, so I don't know why I can't see. Oh, there we go. That can get personally traumatizing, exhausting. Working hard enough is hard enough some days, let alone doing the extra. Yeah. Yes. And I think the unpaid aspect of it is also really important to acknowledge, that you're doing these extra job duties that aren't part of your job description, and you still have to make time for everything that is part of your job description. So that can be draining. Raven, thank you for the follow, friend. Welcome onto the It Gets Better channel. I hope you're doing well. Welcome. Other key subjects that were brought up, they talked about the importance of policies that are they talked about how policies are very heteronormative in nature. And so, for example, the example they gave was how maternity leave and family leave can work if a queer family is having a kiddo. and how like a lot of those policies don't really protect like the full queer family experience, and how that can kind of be difficult to navigate. Like think about if, for example, there's like a polyamorous family, like no protections for every parent involved getting the opportunity to have some of that like maternity, paternity, those are all gendered terms, but that like parental leave to connect with that child at a young age, for instance. And there's many other examples of that, of how policies can be very gendered. And everyone is equal and families are different. Exactly. Families are very different. And that's not always reflected in policies. They're usually very heteronormative and very like a nuclear family based. The idea that it's like a mom, a dad, and a kid, which can leave out legal protections for queer folks. J-Bing, thank you for the follow, friend. Welcome to the It Gets Better channel. Welcome, welcome. And then the other thing that was talked about, which I hadn't thought of but I thought was super interesting, was being a representative for other queer folks, and how there's obviously positives to that, but there's also this pressure that comes with that. So, if you have a run-in with your boss, or like someone in power, and they take that experience negatively, even if you didn't do anything wrong, right? Sometimes people with a lot of biases or problematic natures will then take that interpretation of it and they will apply that to future queer folks who apply. And that can be similar as well for like, other identities too. Like, I think this happens to like BIPOC workers more than it happens to white queer folks, where if you're perceived as aggressive, which is often a microaggression that happens, then like future BIPOC workers might apply and they're going to assume, okay, like this person's going to act like that person, even though communities are not a monolith and their original interpretation was racist in nature to begin with. But, that can be like this pressure that you want to be like this good queer person, and so that other queer people get an opportunity. Raven says, I get this as a trans guy who isn't out yet because of safety reasons. Yeah, we were just talking a little bit about determining whether you should be out in the workplace or not, and what that looks like, and how that can be a little bit difficult to navigate, depending on your situation. And then I found this cool resource. Let me get the link for you all. Put it in chat. It's not perfect or anything, but if you're like just kind of starting to enter the working world, if you're like maybe younger and newer to working and you're thinking about it, it just provides like a lot of questions to ask yourself, and to reflect before you start like applying to jobs. So things like, do you want to be out at work? What identities might you want to be comfortable being out with, and what identities might not you be? Because maybe you're comfortable being out as queer in your sexuality. Why do none of my links work? That's so rude. Callie, I'll send it to you and see if it works because you're a mod. I think maybe... Oh yeah, that's what you said. I see. You DM'd me that information and I simply did not perceive it until now, but I sent it to you. I should ask them if they can like mod the streamers too, because that'd be helpful. But yeah, it asks you like a lot of really good questions, so that you don't find yourself in a situation where you kind of like, uh-oh, it didn't want to post for you this time either. Or no, mine, it said it was a hostile message, probably because it has queer in it. I swear it's not a hostile message. No. Oh, Twitch in there. Stinky, whatchamacallit, blocked terms or whatever, and always blocking queer terms. Have a pronoun pin. Yeah, that can be like a nice little easy way to quietly. I remember like I was out at my last job with all of the people I immediately worked with. My pronouns were on my like card. It was me and one other they them friend on the entire campus, and they worked in the queer department. But sometimes we'd go to sessions and stuff, and it's like I don't want to like go into all of this, but I would have little pronoun pins and things like that. So, and it also has categories on like laws and protections. So maybe where do you want to live? Where do you want to work? And what laws and policies and protections exist for you in those spaces? What kind of questions can you ask your employer if you're considering working for them? Things about dress code, bathrooms, family benefits, all of this. So it's like a really great way. It even has questions that you can ask in your interview. So don't be scared to like ask, an interview. It can feel like it's for them to ask you questions, but it's also for you to ask them questions. And so they have questions here about like what climate is your like workplace? Are any of your workers LGBT? Are we allowed to talk about our personal lives? How are LGBTQ folks supported? And maybe you don't even feel comfortable asking those questions in an interview, and that's okay too, depending on your circumstances. But it is a good little resource, I think, for getting started on thinking about those kind of things. So, plus I live in the South, so it's not the most accepting. Yeah, not everywhere. I mean, I wouldn't say there's sometimes like a bias, I think, towards like the whole South being unaccepting, and I don't think that's true. But you do need to be mindful of like where you live and what the associations with queer folks are in that environment, and whether or not it's safe for you to come out in the working place. All right, chat. That was great. I loved sharing my little presentation with you. Thank you for all of your and yes, Callie, the link worked. It just for me, I must have like the filters on or whatever, so it showed up as like a hostile message, and I had to like tell it like, okay, you can show me the message. I don't know why, but I'll have to mess with my settings, but that's okay. I think it should have worked for everyone else. And if you saw a bunch of stars, you can like right click it and tell it like you want to see it. So if your filters also blocked out queer on the queer channel, then you can fix it if you want. But thank you all for sharing like kind of your own experiences with things, and validating some of my experiences and things like that. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna throw up the BRB screen because we have some wonderful panelists joining us in the next segment, and we're gonna talk a little bit more about our personal experiences being queer professionals. And I'm gonna, stretch, drink some water, all the good things, and get everybody set up, and then we'll be back. So take a little break, get some water, stretch. If you haven't had breakfast or whatever, lunch, dinner, whatever meal makes sense for you wherever you are in the world, make sure you take care of yourselves, and I will see you all in a few minutes. Boom. Hello, chat. We figured it out, I think. Let me know if anything is... Oh, hold on. Hide this. There. That should be good. If y'all... Okay. Do y'all want to just say hi or something so chat can let me know if you're echoed or anything weird?
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. I'll let
Look at all those legends.
Callie or someone say. Hello, Momo. Thank you for the compliment. All right. I think it's all good. So unless someone shouts at me and tells me it's bad. Okay, good, great. Appreciate it.
I don't think they would shout at you. I think they would just kindly say that it wasn't good.
I didn't mean it literally. Don't take it too seriously, okay? Okay. All right. I had everybody write up a little introduction, so I'll probably just have you each like kind of introduce yourself. I originally was gonna like introduce you, but I feel like it's nice having it from your own voice. So, and it's like prep for you all. So, because I know I can pick on them, I'll start with Toast.
I was told last night that I needed to have an introduction that typed out, and I did it last night, and now I'm being told it's not even being used.
And you're using it right now to introduce yourself. I didn't want to like get y'all on and be like, tell me about yourself. And then you're like panicked on the spot.
No, that's actually fair.
Anxiety kicks in. Yeah.
I never remember what I've done, so that's fair.
That's
I think you're muted, Ace. Or I don't hear them.
Oh no.
I think they just maybe covered their mouth with their shirt.
Okay, so here's...
I can hear Ace.
Okay.
LOL.
That's so weird.
Not the LOL.
Oh no.
Okay.
Momo
Give
offered
us a shout, Ace.
Shout Ace.
Why don't I hear Ace randomly?
Everyone else does, even the community.
I'm gonna keep my comments to myself.
That's so rude.
Oh my god.
I have to remember
You
what
hit
channel
the
we're
very
on.
speaker next to them?
I got
No, I guess let me
I'm
check.
melding with you, Ace, right now.
They're a bit
Thanks,
quiet
bro.
compared to the rest.
That's fair, but I don't hear them at all. So.
Did you? If you right click, I'm like trying to see if like there's a way to.
But I heard them
specifically just
earlier.
mute them or something.
Right, and then as soon as we went live, they couldn't hear me.
Mhm.
Technology is so rude.
We can still hear you.
Well,
Just
I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
This is very ace phobic. I would like to hear.
Not the
I guess that's an
That's
actual
close to what
word,
I
so
was
maybe I
thinking,
shouldn't say
so.
that.
Yeah.
Cold cat.
I was thinking worse. That was nicer than what I was
Yeah, that was
thinking.
very nice.
Just gonna...
I guess you could check the
Um,
if you right click and check the audio destination, make sure it's going to your G735.
Okay.
Oh, that's
I'm gonna
like the name of the
pretend I know how to
headphones.
do
I'm like,
that.
what the hell?
They also have these headphones like off to the side, and those are G733. So I've gotten familiar with the.
So the weird thing that I'm experiencing is that for some reason Ace's browser source also has its own audio thing on OBS, but nobody else's does.
Yeah, I did
That's
that.
weird.
So that's my bad.
Oh.
If you click Ace's
I can mute
browser
that, but I
source,
still can't hear.
hit properties on that thing, and then scroll down and unclick Control Audio via OBS.
Okay.
Ace, say something.
Saying something.
That's why. See, this was toast. I could not be blamed for this.
I
B
love
comes
that.
and asks me for help. I troubleshoot, and the thing that was wrong was that B just simply had them muted on the tab individually. I had tried something and then undo the thing because I didn't realize it was a problem. Here
It's
we all
fine. It's
are.
fine. It's fine.
Thriving.
It's-
Yeah.
Would it be the first stream back on the channel if there weren't tech issues? No.
Exactly.
I wanted
These
to
are
be,
minor.
He's trying to blame me for this issue. B's solution was to take their headphones off. So
Listen,
That's also.
I thought we weren't
I
going to talk
told
about
you that you
I
weren't supposed
wasn't
to.
going to talk about
That
it
was in
until they tried to
confidence.
blame me for this.
Wow.
I'm feeling
You can't cancel me on this screen.
too perceived. No, I'm just noticing my captions aren't showing up, so I'm trying to fix it, but there's not really enough room, so we'll see how this goes.
Oh. Well, if you need to block off some of my face to move it to the top right so all our captions can be shown to make it more
We
accessible,
can
that's fine.
we can
Let's
try
talk
Just
that.
about
completely
these
turn me
hairs
off.
Actually, that kind of works.
It does kind of work on the top.
All right, we're going for
Yeah.
we have top energy
At least
today,
a little
not
more
bottom
space.
energy.
So you
We
want
love
me to
this Switch
introduce
energy,
myself?
you know?
All right.
Switch.
Toasty,
I'm
introduce
sorry.
yourself now that everybody can hear everybody.
Okay, perfect. Hello, my name is Toasty. I use they, them pronouns. I currently work in a nonprofit focused on voter mobilization and social justice. And I've been working there for about 8 months and have been openly queer in that workplace. And then before that, I also worked in higher education as a graduate assistant and professor in gender studies, women's studies, and political science. I got my bachelor's and master's in political science, so all those things aligned really nicely. And then outside of my job, I do a little bit of streaming on Twitch. I play a lot of Valorant. I help B with all of their tech issues, and also constantly am asking them when we can get Taco Bell.
These are all true. Oh, amazing. Let's go ahead and get Tofi next.
Hello. Cool. Yeah, I'm Tofi. I use they, them pronouns, please. And I am my technical job title is data analytics developer. I just say data analyst, like analyst or analysis person for a large like healthcare company, which mainly does research, mainly in the healthcare sector, but we also do like international research, human resources, like children, you know, like just research across the board. You can really tell that I'm good at explaining my job to people. Data analyst.
It's the you know for me. Like, I don't know, Tofi.
It's a no, dog.
Yeah. So I just sit back behind a computer and program all day, which is probably the easier way to explain that. At our work, I am the lead of the Pride ERG Employee Resource Group, as well as the Trans Inclusion Committee. And in this job, I've been since 2019, so it's going on 4 years, I think, in May, which is really, really exciting. And I started the job cosplaying as a woman, and now I am very openly out. As non-binary, so actually a lot of people like know my dead name and stuff, and I've like changed all that, so like they've seen me transition, people I've worked with throughout the years, which is stressful and also exciting. And yeah, I think that's all I got.
Fabulous. And last but certainly not least, Ace.
Hi, my name is Ace. My pronouns are they, them. What do I do? I got my bachelor's in political science at Buffalo State, so upstate New York, and I got my master's in public administration at UAlbany, so the capital of New York State. I currently work too many jobs. My most
Yes,
fun
you do.
one.
That's true.
My most fun one. I am the director of community organizing at Equality New York, which is a statewide advocacy organization for queer people in New York State. I'm responsible for community engagement as well as advocacy efforts. My other two fun jobs, I run support groups at the largest center in New York City for queer folks, for TGNC folks. And then in February, I'm going to start doing BIPOC TGNC folks support group. And then my full-time position, because all of those were part-time, I am a senior policy analyst at Immigration Research Initiative. So I oversee a lot of immigration advocacy, specifically around Medicaid and unemployment insurance across the nation with a lens for New York State. And I think that's all I do. Outside of that, I'm an activist and a content creator. I need to stream more, but I just do a lot of things on Twitter, a lot of social justice tweets.
How you don't have time to stream? Did you just
Let's
hear
say
all
I
the
think
jobs
you need to
you
do some things less.
It's in my
Imagine.
schedule, and I consistently push it.
You're so valid.
That's fair.
And all of you will technically know who I am, but from a working front of things, I got my degree from Syracuse University, my bachelor's in higher education and human services. And I did a majority of my traditional working, the caption size. I can do my best. Let's see how it goes. Let me put those also like above everything else, because you're so valid. It's super small. Where did they go? Oh, they went into a folder. I was like, hello?
It's like I still see them. I
It would be
promise.
nice, I guess, if we could have like 2 of them on the top and 2 of them on the bottom. I don't think there's a way to do that unless we had 2 separate links.
Yeah, no, I don't.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That would be a
That's
lot of
actually a
settings at the
really
moment,
good
but maybe in the
idea.
future.
Yeah, we could do 2 browser
Mhm.
sources in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Big braining it, you know, just like thinking
Right.
of
That was
workarounds.
wild.
That's my whole thing.
I would never.
This is why they're tech toast, you know?
It's true.
Right. Change your name. Change your name. Come on.
I just, you know,
Who's
All
gonna
right.
tell?
Pixel
Like,
already
who's
has
gonna
it
say
as well,
otherwise?
actually.
Hopefully that works. That doesn't really cover anybody's faces and it's a little bit bigger. But yeah, I got my degree in human services and higher education. And then having them in the middle. What do you mean in the middle? Like, boom? Like something like that? I could do that. And I spent most of my working time in education. Specifically, as I said earlier, I work with first generation low income students and helping them navigate trying to get into college, into university, so that they can hopefully, get some higher paying jobs and repair some of the inequities that we see in terms of the quality of the jobs that folks in marginalized communities are able to get. During the pandemic, however, it's a fun time to be a disabled person during the pandemic. So I actually stopped working in that environment because, well, things started going back in person before the pandemic was actually over. And I didn't want to be forced to work in an in-person environment that was unsafe. And also, even when we were working from home, there was like no systems in place to navigate this kind of situation, and so my students were going through like the hardest things that they'd ever gone through, stuck in home environments that weren't comfortable, and I was given like zero resources to actually be able to help them at any meaningful capacity. So I transitioned out of education, at least for the time being, and with the support of my lovely human toast, have been working full time in content creation, doing the work that I do here over on It Gets Better, as well as on my own channel. And I don't know how long that'll last, but we'll see. That's what we're doing right now, because the panini is still in fact going. Correct, Momo. Yes, indeed. Wear your mask. Anyways, let's get into it. So just for folks who don't know you, you all gave like your professional background, and to the extent that you're comfortable, what kind of identities do you hold in the queer realm? What terms kind of resonate with you in terms of your queerness, so that folks kind of know what lens that you're operating from when you answer these questions. And let's just go in the same circle to keep it nice and easy.
Yeah, sure. So I probably first and foremost identify as queer. Occasionally I'll throw lesbian around, as that feels like relatively accurate as well, but not in the full sense. Like pan and bi, all of those always felt like almost there, kind of. And my sexuality label has always been the one that I've personally cared least about. I feel like it impacts me the least. And then I'm also trans non-binary, and that one impacts me a lot more. And then I also hold my polyamorous identity as a queer identity. I feel like the way that I do polyamory and exist as a polyamorous person is a very queer way. And I think that also has a lot of impact, especially in something like the workplace, which we can talk more about when it kind of comes through. But yeah, those are my big three.
Not the big three.
It's my big three.
I guess that means I'm next then. Yeah, I think I'm the same kind of way, where queer, I just kind of use queer as like an all-encompassing label, especially because I just think it's easier for me, and it's less stressful for me to think about like all the micro labels that kind of go into it, that can sometimes, like they're sometimes helpful for folks who like find themselves in the micro labels, but also sometimes isn't as helpful for my brain if I like deviate a little bit. So I generally just use queer, trans non-binary as well, more fluid in gender presentation, even though I still exist as like a trans non-binary agender person, and I'm also asexual, and so those are the main ones that I hold.
Hi, I'm trans non-binary. I tend to use queer a lot. I mean, it's in my username. but like I don't know, I am a lesbian. I just grew up not wanting to say that word. Like it was just a word that was like weird to say. Like I would always say I was gay. So I just ended up just using queer because I feel like I'm okay conflating all the identities under the queer identity. So trans, non-binary, queer.
Hello, new friends that welcomed in. Hi, Rad. Hi, Shiny.
Oh, what's good, Shiny?
Yes. And in terms of myself, I also identify as non-binary, queer, lesbian, polyamorous, all of the things, all of the ace, yes, all of the above. So very good. I thought that would be helpful for folks in what kind of frame of reference y'all are coming from. And y'all have talked a little bit about the professional work that you've done and kind of like what industries that you've worked in. I don't know what your like work history is, but I was curious if your experiences have been different in different fields, or like how your experience has been, maybe if you ever worked any jobs before what you're kind of currently doing, because I know what I experienced, for example, in education is very different from if someone works in corporate and having to deal with like navigating queerness in that space is significantly easier. And for these questions, feel free, if you have a thought, like we can just kind of pop out.
I'll go first if that's okay. So I come from an extensive career background in government. So I used to work for like Governor Cuomo, unfortunately, when he was in office for 4 years, and I oversaw the health non-Medicaid budget and the budget for the state office for the aging, which is for the elderly. Um, being queer in a government office space is very different than being queer in a nonprofit office space, especially when the nonprofit office space is geared towards queerness, right? So being mass presenting, Luna, I am working. Please do not shake while I'm working. Nah. Being
We
mass
love her. It's okay.
being mass presenting in the office space when I worked for the governor was hard. I had a supervisor that would be like, why do you dress like a man in front of everybody? Like, in a conference room, as though that was appropriate to ask. There was also an investigation with him, and he no longer worked with me. But that's one thing. It was hard. It was very hard. I felt like I was the only one in a lot of ways. There was another masked lesbian, but they were white, right? So, and they were older. So the typical older white lesbian look is more acceptable or more accepted than the masked lesbian black look, especially when you add in the fact that I typically wear my afro. It's hard. But now, gratefully, I work in queer spaces. So it's preferred for me to express myself. It's preferred for me to go into the community and make people know that it's okay to be you. So I really appreciate it. Like, I appreciate that my supervisor, pardon me, she hates when I say boss, encourages me to be my full authentic self. And I'm very grateful. But in my full-time position, I work for a cishet white man. Not with it. Like he tries. My name's Ashley Ann. I'm okay saying that because if you Google A Sutherland, you're gonna see my full name anyway. So Ashley Ann, which is very femme, and I hate it, but my name has power because I'm an immigrant and I had to come to this country. So in the professional space, I typically say my name's Ashley Ann. Then I switched it to Ash. It was seamless for them. And then they found out that I also go by Ace. And they asked me, like, hey, do you want us to start calling you that in the workspace? And I was just like, thank you for asking. I asked y'all to switch it up too much for me already, but also it would just confuse me to go by like Ace when I'm doing immigration policy and then Ace when I'm going by queer stuff. Like I'm just so used to Ace being queer that like I don't know. In my head it's weird. But yeah, I'm lucky in my ability to express myself authentically in the workspace.
I think my experiences have been different as well, and I don't think drastically so, but I have noticed that some of the things that were bigger gripes for me were due to like me being in a physical person, like in-person job. I remembered when I first started my graduate degree that there was a gender neutral bathroom, but it was on the other side of the building on the first floor, and my office was on the fourth floor. And there were days where I felt like dysphoric, where I wanted to like go seek it out, and I would tell my professor like, bathroom break is going to take me 15 minutes instead of the 5 that you expect, because I'm not going to the bathroom. It's like right across the way. And for the most part, they were quite accepting of that. I got misgendered more there, not from lack of trying, just clearly from lack of practice. That I think very rarely was somebody like actively misgendering me in any kind of capacity. I did have a lot of queer colleagues, like other graduate students. There were a lot of other queer folks, and so I got quite lucky with having like a really good community around me. So and there clearly wasn't any bias. It was a political science department, a women's studies department. Like they were quite queer as well, and they were quite progressive, I would say. But I remember like the bathroom being like a big like just like an annoyance for me. I guess for me it wasn't like as big of a deal, but it was definitely this like kind of like bug on the windshield kind of vibe. And when I brought it up, it was very like, we cannot change the layout of the building. And I'm like, I'm still annoyed about that kind of vibe. Whereas my current job, there is a couple of other queer folks. It's a very small nonprofit. There's only about 10 of us that work there. So there's like 1 or 2 other queer folks in there. Everyone's quite accepting. My pronouns get messed up very rarely. Pronouns were already like a thing when I like integrated into that nonprofit. They were already quite like with it. And it makes sense, they're a social justice nonprofit. So occasionally somebody will still mess them up. But for the most part, quite good. And I use my own bathroom, so that doesn't come up. That doesn't come up ever. But I sometimes do wonder if this was like, prior to the pandemic. I don't know. We're a social media company, so maybe we would have always been remote. But if there was like an office, for example, if there were like going to be issues with that, my brain still kind of says no, just based off of how the organization is run. But yeah, that's how those two different things kind of like operate for me. I've also been quite lucky with like the types of jobs that I hold, that I kind of always seek accepting jobs and accepting places as a ways to protect myself, at least initially.
Yeah. And I feel like I've had a unique experience just because like I came out during the pandemic, and so this job that I'm currently in is the only one I've been in after like my little time in grad school after dropping out of that, because that was not a fun time for me. And so I think my experience has been a little bit unique. Thankfully, it's been really good because everyone there has been really kind, really like good at like picking up the pronouns, picking up like my new name that I use there, because I started as a woman using she, her pronouns with my dead name. And so it's been a fun process of like, getting everyone on board to like switch all that over, like change like everything, like between email and WebEx and like just like on the internet and just like a ridiculous of different places that they have to go in and like fix the names and things in. And so I've been very, very fortunate to be in a job that like is actively like accepting and like is open to like hearing like how they can improve and how they can change, sometimes with a little bit of a little bit of aggressive pressure from us in the trans inclusion committee, but like we've got some big people who at least like push those forward for us, which is really, really nice.
Yeah, I've only ever worked in education and content creation, so I've never had to work in an environment. I mean, I guess like I've worked in like customer service, which I'm sure a number of us have done our time in the customer service realm, and that was, inevitably going to be like people misgendering you because they don't know who you are, and the interactions are so quick. And like for myself, I don't take that personally because, there's a lot of unlearning that's required to goes into it, and I understand that the first thing they see is a woman when they look at me. But I have noticed that like where I worked had different experiences. So when I was working in New York versus working in Wisconsin, it was a very different experience, even though it's the exact same field, obviously. In New York, I was very much, they, them pronouns, be. It helped that I was never anything else to them. Like they had never met me as anything else. So that made it less of a transition. But working in Wisconsin, I kind of made a joke about it earlier, but like I myself and the person who worked in the queer resource department, which was a very small department at this like Wisconsin university, were the only ones who used any non like binary gendered pronouns. So that definitely did not go over as like smoothly and easily with them, and sometimes intentional and sometimes just lack of practice, like Toast said. And then being online, I mean, all of you have experiences being online within my own social bubbles. You know, when I'm on Twitch, like generally I have a very positive experience. Everybody who's in my community who knows me pretty much uses my correct pronouns, whatever. Occasionally someone will slip up and the mods are just like, hey, and then it's fine. But putting your putting your content out on like all these other platforms, sometimes the algorithm sends it places that it is not meant to be, and then you get a lot of people like negatively like commenting, intentionally trying to be like hurtful and harmful. And obviously you can, you know, delete those comments, you can do moderation and things, but it still does affect your like mental health and things. So putting yourself online as a queer person is an interesting realm of career work, I guess.
Yeah. The online aspect is definitely like one of the most unique things for me, like, is when I play Val, I have like just enough of a queer voice that people genuinely don't know if I'm a 13-year-old boy or if I'm a femme.
Yeah.
And so you can hear like every now and then in Valorant, they can't see me, they'll ask. I'd be like,
Are you a boy or a girl?
they're like, are you a boy or like are you? And sometimes I won't answer. So, and occasionally, like once in a blue moon, somebody will like actually ask for my pronouns, which is quite common because uncommon because most of the time you would just refer to people as their agents. But so the online aspect where I've gotten that, I've definitely experienced some homophobia and transphobia as well. Not as much as you would expect, but I think because my voice like fits into that really nice spot of people really can't tell, which is interesting.
You do get that question a lot when we play together.
Yep.
It's very
Yep.
Seeing your different responses is depending on what mood you're in and who's asking is always
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Another thing I was really interested in and what other people's experiences have been has been the application process. I know for myself, like when I go to apply for jobs nowadays, I put my pronouns and be like everything on my resume, but like for a long time, I would put like my full legal name, and then I would put, maybe depending on the job, I would put like the nickname somewhere else, like trying to figure out how queer do I want to be in this application and how queer do I want to show up in this interview is something that I always find interesting to navigate, and I'm still not always like 100% sure what ways I want to show up in that environment where you're like making a first impression.
I actually just opened my resume because I did not remember if I had my pronouns there, and I did not, interestingly enough for me. Granted, the very first job listed from when I had previously applied was in the Women Gender Sexuality Studies program. So the queerness, I think, was probably pretty not
evident.
That non-queer people don't work there, but I think more often than not, queer people work in the queer studies department. So the pronouns weren't there, which is interesting. And I don't know if there was like an intentional decision or just like I had like a professional resume for so long and I didn't even think to add it. And I still go by my full government name when it comes to work. So that was not, although something I've considered changing many times, not necessarily a factor for me.
So for me, like, I don't know, like I've never put my pronouns on my resume. It's not that I don't think it's a cool thing. It's just like something I've preferred not to do. I have different things that I have to worry about when I'm applying, right? And I'll be honest with that. Like, again, Ashley Ann Sutherland, I'll say it, sounds very white. If you look up the last name Sutherland, it is Scottish. I have like a whole flag. It's weird. So apparently the 5% white of me is very prevalent. So I'm going off of that part where I'm just like, I hope that they think I am. I enter the room and then it's me, and then that messes with you. So the whole being black thing is what comes at the forefront of when I'm applying. However, from someone that's like currently I'm accepting positions. I'm a manager. I should say it like that. And I was a manager when I worked at Whitney Young Health Center, which is a federally qualified health center in Albany, New York, that I oversaw like HIV, people that were not financially stable, things like that. I had people that applied and put their pronouns, and I was like, wow, that's weird, because I have a lot of things to undo, right? Because I grew up in a country that was very homophobic. And I'm just like, why would you do that? And then I met with them and I'm like, yo, this is real. And I respect it, because sometimes you have to just have that conversation, right? And be like, well, what was your reasoning? Like, why do you think that's important to put on a resume? And they told me, because I don't want somebody to hire me and not know the real me. And I
It's like a
appreciated
filter
that.
almost.
Right.
Like it
Exactly.
automatically, and obviously this is a huge privilege, because if you're like if you are in desperate need of a job, then you don't have you can't be
Right.
like out here creating barriers for yourself. But if you have that capacity, it can be like a really nice filter of like, if you're going to cause me problems with who I am as a person from the day I walk into this space, maybe this is not a job that I want to go into day in and day out and like have to fight for who I am just to exist.
Exactly. So again, coming from a government standpoint where I was that bureaucrat where I thought that was weird at first, I've evolved. And I think it's very important, because you do have to filter out. You do have to feel safe. You do have to, if you have the privilege to, put your safety first.
Yeah. And again, I come from a really like weird position where I transitioned in the middle of my job. So I was like very comfy with she, her pronouns, right? Using my dead name now. But like as someone who also, so our job does like, you know, job interviews and things like that, where they'll pull people in and ask folks like just throughout the company if they want to be in a specific, like if they want to like be one of the interviewers, because we have like a 3 or 4 step process where you meet like 20,000 people, because it's
whoa,
just excessive. Like it's a lot. Like it was like an 8-hour day whenever I interviewed, and that was like step number 2. It was wild. But like it's really like I think it's more about making sure you feel comfortable, because I know that like, you know, sometimes like depending on who you get as an interviewer, like they'll actually sit there and like, okay, like introduce themselves with their pronouns to make sure that you're comfortable and you know that like they're inclusive and they're trying to be like that. And then other times, depending on the interviews, you don't really get that, and you have to sit there and be like, all right, am I gonna be immediately thrown out if I introduce myself like this? And I think it's especially important like to think about the nuance of like having the privilege to be able to choose whether or not to put that on there, because like as someone who doesn't really have anything to fall back on, like I don't have family, things like that, it's just like I can't choose to do that. Like I've got to do whatever like I think people are going to perceive me as if I were to go to a different job. Like I would have to be like, okay, are they going to view me as a woman or a man, and then just base like my pronouns and stuff off of that. But also I think something that I made sure to mention that I wanted to mention here too is like I think that it's really important to try to like, if you can, find a job that seems like it's going to be inclusive. And so like one big thing that I recommend is to look up something called the HRC, which is the Human Rights Campaign. And every single year they rank a bunch of different companies on how inclusive they are. So like they look at like benefits, if they include like domestic partners, if they include like trans healthcare, things like that. And so I highly suggest, and I can like give the link to Ahmad to drop it, but they have a bunch of different like jobs and corporations, and they give them a certain percentage on whether or not that place is like inclusive to work at. And granted, it's not like, you know, it's not like comprehensive, it's not going to fit every single thing, but seeing people have like, and companies have 100 on there, it's going to make it a lot easier to like, it's going to make it more likely that you're going to be accepted there, and like people are going to like use your pronouns and like look at all that stuff. So I highly suggest, like if you're job searching, look at those companies.
What's
my job
there? I'm like, oh,
Toast dropped it in chat too. Yeah, the Corporate Equality Index.
Barnes and Noble.
Great. Yeah, there's a lot of jobs on there, and I was like, oh, y'all are inclusive. Like I didn't realize that. That's horrible.
Airbnb, like
yeah, right. It's like that's cool, but yeah, it's great, and they rank them every single year, and they're always like adding to it also to make sure that it's like being updated, which is really nice.
Yeah,
that was a little sidebar. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. Thank you.
I work right now for like really small organs, so I could check, but I doubt they would be on there. One thing that also tipped me is that like they when I was emailing back and forth about an interview, I like noticed that they had their pronouns in their like email signature that I think I also did. So that was probably a flag for them as well. But that's like another like small things that you can look for as you're like getting ready for the interview process to potentially. I think I also like Googled all of them or like looked at their staff page and like tried to like learn a little bit more about them. And they were a very crunchy org, so it was very like, oh, okay, like
Not the crunchy.
I mean, we're kind of crunchy though.
Yeah.
For a data company, for a social media data behavior science organization that does voter mobilization and social justice, we're pretty crunchy.
I think it's interesting though, because there are jobs that like they might not have pronouns in there, but they are inclusive. Like my current position at IRI, Immigration Research Initiative, they didn't like consider any of this because one, we're in our first year, and the two people that started it are not queer. So it's not something they had to put into their line of thinking. It's not that they wanted to X out anybody. It's not their perspective, right? So when I came on, I'm like, yo, can we add pronouns on the website? They were with it. And I started as she, her. And I came out as non-binary, I believe, August 2021. And I asked them if I could change my pronouns. And they sent to the graphic designer, whatever, do it. So they were with it, and they added it in their email signature. They added on the website. Like They were with it. They just didn't know like that's something that people wanted. When we write our reports now, they're using folks with an X because I asked them to. They're using Latin or Latinx because I asked them to. Some people just don't know, but they're willing to try. Like I just feel like sometimes they might feel like it's a little weird when you're not in the community to start advocating for the community without a lack of a better word, representative or a member of the community on your team, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying like risk it, take a chance, but like risk it, take a chance. You could be the person that changes everything. Yeah, if you're safe and able to.
Yeah. Especially if you're economically like needing to, right? Like, yeah.
It's also interesting because we talk a lot about I'm like seeing a parallel to what you're saying, Ace, of like a lot of times when you talk to like places about their space not being accessible for disabled folks, they're like, oh well, we don't have any like disabled folks that come here. It's like, if you would put in the work to make your space accessible, maybe you would have more disabled clients, customers. And so similarly, if you're watching and you're someone you're an organization, maybe there isn't any queer folks that you know of, first of all, that you know of, and that if you start doing that kind of work that Ace is talking about, if you're able to, if you feel comfortable, even if you aren't queer, of saying, can we throw the pronouns on here? Can we do this? Can we do that? You might see more queer applicants who feel more comfortable applying in the first place because there are signals to them that they would be welcome. You know, that kind of thing.
There is also the unacknowledged like labor, like you were talking about in your presentation of like what Ace was doing and like what I'm sure all of us do, at least. I mean, like Toffee Lake is on like a whole committee for it.
Listen, I could rant about that all day. Like the amount of work that we have to put in to like we made like an entire like external facing page about like inclusive research or like the why you should be using pronouns and like asking people pronouns instead of just assuming it and like
for free.
For free. And the thing is, like the thing is
that's
like a lot of I just listen, I'm so upset because the thing is they do so much of like, I feel like their heart's in a good place, right? We've got this whole DEI council that's filled with a whole bunch of like cis POC, like people of color at the very least. So at least we've got something going there, but they're all cis, right? And so they put a lot of the burden on us to educate, but then don't give us charge codes for it, so we can barely bill our time for it. And then along with that, like wanting to like show externally, like asking like, hey, can we make blog posts about you as the ERG lead to show like how inclusive we are, but then not letting us like send all company emails like about all the articles and education we're putting in, but then we're expected to do all this as long as it's external facing. Who cares about internal? But like externally, we want to see that. It's like, how are you like, it ends up being really frustrating because like I love the ERG work. I think it's really important to have ERGs, especially when you have like marginalized folks, especially to make sure that like people are being educated. But like as B was talking about in the presentation earlier, like the stress of doing that and like expecting that from marginalized folks who already are like struggling to get into the workforce and expecting them to put in that labor is really like disgusting. But then like we can't say no because then otherwise what's gonna happen? None of this is ever gonna get out and we just have to sit on it. And it's just like I always feel like there's like good intention behind it, but there's not a lot of follow-up and like always putting the onus on the marginalized person. And it's so stressful and
but
exhausting.
not giving you the resources to actually like
Exactly.
manifest what you're expressing. Because I remember working in like higher education, frequently being asked to be always the committees. Do you want to be on this committee? Do you want to be on that committee? Can you join this committee? And I'm like,
You're the face of all the gay stuff.
but I still only get the same amount of hours, right? Like, and so you're just supposed to fit it in somewhere with everything else you're supposed to do. But then it's like you sit on these committees, you have these conversations, but the people with the power aren't sitting there with you. So you're just kind of presenting this information and your advice and like your all of this to people who then like are like, yeah, sure. But like there's no follow-up, like you said. So it starts to feel like you're talking to like a little bubble and like nothing's really actually happening on a bigger scale, which is frustrating and like time consuming for no reason. And I feel like sometimes they just want you to feel, well, I can't think of the word, but they like want to appease you. Like, oh, we're doing something, so don't be mad at us and don't flame us externally. Don't tell people that we're not doing what we're like. They want to protect their image, but they don't want to actually do what it takes to make it a truly inclusive working environment. And that's definitely challenging to deal with.
Yeah, I'm big against that. Like, I've been that person in government spaces that were like re-traumatizing myself for free. And actually Equality
That
New
part.
York is Equality New York is a reason that I stopped all that. Like before I became an employee, I was just an activist with them. I was just always out with them. And when I give like panel discussions like this or speeches, Equality New York pays me for my time. They would pay me $150 because they're like, we're not gonna re-traumatize you for the free. Like that sounds ridiculous. So moving forward, they were just like, yo, make sure that you're not talking about this just because, like, obviously I'm not getting paid for this, full disclosure. However, I'm doing it out of love and admiration for my friends that I know personally. Like everyone here is a close friend of mine in some way, shape, or fashion. But typically I don't do it for free. And I don't think anyone should, if you are allowed to, if you choose to, and if you're able to.
Yeah, I also like have had like an interesting kind of like move back from that kind of work within my workspace. Of it's hard because there's like the heartstrings pull of like, what is my company and my organization missing because I'm not doing this work? Like what could be better? And like my little heart wants to do what Toffee and their ERG and their committees do. And like you're changing lives, especially in the bigger company. Like you have like, I have 10 employees, like I have 10 people coworkers, like this is a very different size. And even then, every now and then I'll still like pop up where like, I introduced my organization to like Disability Pride Month. They didn't know that there was a Pride Month. They had heard of like disability, like employee month where, they knew of that one, but there was so much labor and a disagreement on the word disabled, which I thought was intriguing. There was a lot of power. They like within that, with the definition I chose. I probably was being a little bit spicy for a newer employee, but it's fine. We worked out. But I think about like, if I was doing a little bit more, what would be changing? So I try to keep what I do externally within my organization, the unasked for labor, to a minimum, because I don't have the time. I am exhausted as a person existing in the pandemic. And a person who exists with a partner who has a job where I need to step in every now and then and help out, and like all those different types of things. So I'm not doing anything extra, like if I really don't have to. And even then I still think that that's a little bit hypocritical for me to say, because when I started joining meetings and we were like introducing ourselves to like external partners and stuff like that, I'd always said like, oh, like, you know, my name's this, I use they them pronouns, etc. And now the rest of my organization does that, even if I'm not the first person to introduce myself. Like they also start introducing themselves with pronouns. So like it's so minor, but it's still so true. Like that is something that I did that influenced their behavior to be more inclusive. So I agree with Ace that I just simply, I can't sit there and do a presentation on how to be more queer friendly, how to be more marginalized friendly, all those different types of things, because it's just, especially if you're not going to pay me for it, you know.
No.
I just want to do a quick call in with love. Tofi's name is pronounced Tofi.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I've been thinking here, sitting like how there's so much overlap between what you all are saying and your experiences, as well as what I've seen from my own experiences and from my friends in the content creation realm, of like the interesting expectations where like marginalized folks speak out over about issues that are important to them, because they care, because it affects them, because it affects their community. And then there become these interesting social expectations where people follow you for that work and will only engage with trauma related, you know, experiences, and will never engage with your regular content or things that you're just passionate about, that you're having fun with. And simultaneously, I've had experiences where people are like, oh, you're trying to do that for clout, like you're trying to grow based off of it. I'm like, no, I'm trying to do the work that needs to be done, bestie. Like, I promise you, if I didn't have to do this work, I would prefer not to have to put in all of this extra emotional labor and time for free. And yeah, it's just so much overlap. I mean, it's the content creation version of like the marginalized experience in the working world of the committees and the expectations to like do free education like this. That's still there, even in this space. It's very
and it's content
draining.
Very differently. Like some are interested in doing that education. Like I know B is a little bit because of their little educator brain, and then there are other people who are like, I'm not here to educate you. Like, you know, there are other resources, other people that like can do this education for you. And that's also, are you like leaving somebody without that education? You know, it's a whole thing, right? Like,
yeah, because some people don't have access to that, or like they're growing up like in really like horrible spaces where they go online to find community and like want to educate themselves like that.
I like the phrase, just Google it, but I also acknowledge that there's accessibility within like knowing what to Google, even, right?
Yeah, that part.
And the Google algorithm. Yeah, I was gonna say the Google algorithm, depending on what your environment is and what resources you've previously looked at, is going to give you not the answers we're hoping it's going to give you. So it's kind of like, you know, sometimes it's very much like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, you know?
Yeah. And one of my favorite things as a streamer is just to make a command for it. Like all the education we have for like spooky or bean or like ableist language, just having a command for it. That way, if someone comes in and says the thing, I can just be like, all right, exclamation point bean, there's your education. You can go learn more on your own. That way I don't have to like sit here and speak about it 70,000 times because like, you know, people are coming in and out. And so having that at least is a little nice. That way you don't have to continually repeat information.
But like, I feel like we also have to be mindful of like calling out with love, right? Or calling in with love, because some people genuinely do not know. Like, this is not their lived experience. Some people really don't know, like, don't have no queer friends, no black friends. Like, this is what their life is. So, and we've all seen this happen on Twitch, where people just get angry every single time because you're the one denominator, right? Like, it's continuously being asked of you. So yes, you are getting annoyed, but this person's coming in for the first time. They're just like, I don't know. So when you can, please choose to either educate with love or call out with love or provide resources with love, because people don't know. And that's also okay, because I would not know anything about the trans community if Shiny was not so open with his transness. Like, he has answered questions for me that I probably wouldn't ask anyone else. And then I appreciate that because he chooses to do that. And that has helped carve my own path. Also, I want to mention that on Trans Lifeline, they have a resources tab that has a lot of these questions that people are looking for answers for. So I will drop it with Toasty, so you could drop it because I think you're a mod. But yeah, just give a love.
I'm kind of like, that's the approach that I choose to take as well. Like, without burning myself out, of course. Some days I have more spoons for it than others, but I have had genuine experiences where my initial gut instinct is, oh, this person is going to be a problem, right? They're going to be a troll.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, you know what? Let me take a step back. Let me try, and I've given them the information and corrected them, and they've actually been like, very grateful, very like, and then become like a part of the community. Or even if they didn't, they just like, they weren't this like mean troll that I initially anticipated them to be. And it's easy when you've been harassed so much online to assume ill intent of every single person that comes by your space. And I try really hard not to do that, especially because, we have a very neurodivergent friendly space, and a lot of the things are rooted in social expectations, right? Of like Twitch etiquette, which is like a fake set of rules that we've made that aren't anywhere.
It stresses me out so badly. I swear.
I made so many quote unquote social faux pas when I was first starting out. Because like I didn't know what the expectations were, and I was treated by some folks, not everybody, a lot of people kindly helped me learn, and I appreciate those folks, but I was treated by some folks as if I was trying to like intentionally do something harmful because I wasn't following these unspoken rules. And so I also try to do the like call in with love when I can, and also a very it's kind of like, I'm going to give you a chance and you're going to show me who you are. And if you show me who you are twice, then okay, you're out. Like I don't have like endless amounts of energy to give people, but I do try to give them initially the benefit of the doubt if I can.
Yeah. And like also if someone tells you that you're doing it wrong and they're of that identity, take that L and don't make it a huge thing, because this happens all the time. My closest friends are, and everyone knows this, Tofi, Shiny, and Valkyrie Vice, and we hang out on Tuesdays, and I have questions that sometimes I don't understand, like Tofi's ace, and I have asked ignorant questions that I shouldn't have asked in the way that I did ask, and Tofi just simply calls me out, and I'm just like, you know what, you're right, let me reframe the question or do the work myself. And it isn't like a moment like, oh, screw ace, pardon my language, but like, you messed up, let's learn from it and move forward. You know what I mean? Don't make it about you, because it isn't.
Don't be defensive.
You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Yeah. I always say, like, you should be very grateful if someone takes the time to correct you on something, because if I didn't care about you, I just would disengage or I would ignore it. But I tell you because I care and I would like to be able to maintain or continue to develop this relationship. And I cannot do so in the current set of circumstances. So I'm giving you an opportunity to kind of mend this situation that we're in. And if you're going to take it and be super defensive, make it about you, it's just going to wind up being that we can't be friends anymore. And I don't think that's what either of us want here. So like, figure it out. Do you have a journal? Some thoughts some thoughts are meant for the pen and paper, not for Twitter, and not for the person that you're dealing with to have to like, they're not your therapist, right? For you to deal with the emotions you're feeling behind, like, whatever situation you might have messed up in. So yeah, very much so. All right, we got a little bit of time left, and I think I would love to kind of ask kind of a more positive leaning question of like, what do you think companies or fields or people can do to make the environment more queer friendly? What have been things that you felt like were helpful for you as a queer person that made you feel more comfortable in the working world?
That's real, because it's like by field that's complicated, but I'm gonna try to helicopter up, right? So there are people out there that are okay getting re-traumatized for a price. They are called consultants. Reach out to queer consultants. I will toot my own horn at Equality New York. We are aiming to go towards that. I myself, as atypical queer, people have reached out to me and asked me like, hey, can I like ask you a couple questions and I'll give you $50. Sometimes I don't take it, but the fact that you're even offering it, I love that. So I urge companies, individuals, communities to reach out to those of the identities that you're trying to best understand and learn from. Learn from them and not their allies. If you're an ally, amplify. Shut up and amplify. That's it when it comes to these issues. But yeah, looking to consultants and making sure that you pay them adequately for their time and their space.
Yeah, definitely highly agree with that.
That's a really good, like, I've worked in so many places where I've done those types of presentations and like didn't get paid for it. And then thinking about like even just getting paid for it would really make me feel like you not only care about this work, but you're recognizing that it is work and that
it's valuable.
And it's a signal to like the rest of the organization, like this is something important that we're asking them to like we're paying them so we can learn, so like you better learn kind of vibe, right?
That part. And it's like money doesn't buy happiness, but like, yo, give me my money, and if it makes me sad that I had to do this presentation, I'm gonna go buy a Switch, I'm gonna go buy a game, I'm gonna go do whatever that's gonna make me happy and deal with that trauma. You feel me?
Yeah. And also like recognizing that so many, like I did the whole presentation of how many queer folks struggle with accessing economic stability, and not only is amplified if you are trans or hold other marginalized identities. So, you know, recognizing that a lot of times queer folks are struggling financially. So if you're going to have us do work, like help us with that situation that we're in, and you know, get creative. Maybe you're an individual person and you don't have a lot of like literal physical money. Can you get donations from the community that's viewing this content? Can you barter? Is there something you can offer them that would be beneficial to them that might not be physical money? You know, like there are ways to show someone that you appreciate their time if you're creative with it and you ask them questions of like, you know, I may not have X, Y, and Z, but is there anything that I can do to make this feel like it was worth your time as well, and that they feel appreciated?
I love that. That's dope.
I think also being willing to change things. I feel like I have seen lots of those presentations where the culture definitely like shifts a little bit, like maybe people will throw pronouns in their bio or something like that. But like that's like ultimately not a massive fundamental change of the organization. I worked also, I apparently blocked this out a little bit. I also worked at a summer camp. He didn't even remind me. So I worked at a summer camp.
I figure you talk about the things you want to talk about. I don't know.
Fair enough. I worked at a summer camp as an assistant director for a couple of summers. And this was a like as traditional Parent Trap kind of vibe summer camp that you can do to get nitty gritty. And there was a boys' side and a girls' side. There were boys' cabins and girls' cabins. And the second that I got hired, or even in the interview process, you know, I was openly queer. There was no problem with that. It was in like a tiny little, like white wealthy neighborhood in Connecticut as well. So, you know, I was going to be dealing with people that potentially was going to look at me and not be super pleased. Especially as like a director position. And I remember through the years that I had worked there talking about how we should at least have gender neutral cabins and that people could opt into. And
this is making me literally vibrate, because when so I was a student in the program that I was in before I was the like assistant director in that program, and we also had gendered. They lived in dorms and they lived on like a girls' floor and a boys' floor. And I remember when I got hired, and granted, this person knew me since I was in the 6th grade, so like this comment seems really inappropriate, and it is to a degree, but they also like knew me really well. They go, I am willing to like change any, like, you know, I know that you're going to come in here with a lot of thoughts about how you want things to be different, because you've been telling me those things since you were a 9th grader in the program. And she was like, but we are not changing the like housing environment. I was like, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. And then I got the
You
queer,
guys are
like,
God.
I went, like, within, like, a couple months of working there, I started partnering with the queer resource center, and I was like, we are going to show you why this is a problem, because we were having, like, there's more and more openly queer students, right? And we had several trans students, non-binary students. I was like, you are putting us in a position where we're going to get in trouble, because there are going to be like parents and families that are going to fight us on this, and you are ill prepared to deal with this problem. And you're so concerned about things like teenage pregnancy. I'm like, bestie, like you're gonna run into some real serious issues real quick here, and there's no reason for it, because the university themselves have already dealt with this problem but they were so afraid of like young kids and their hormones and things like that. And I was just like, oh, it just sends me that the moment I got in, they were like, we're willing to change, but not that. And I was like, this is like the thing, like you need to be willing to change the fundamental things that are wrong, because otherwise, I remember having a student, we were like supposed to sit on a girl's side and a boy's side of the bus when we would travel, because it would be overnight and they were afraid kids would do things on the bus, right? Listen, it happened, Toast. So you can make the eyeballs, but it happened. So
you're like right there next to so many people.
I remember.
Listen, what happens on band trips doesn't get talked about.
I remember a student looking at me and going, so what side of the bus do I sit on then? A non-binary student, right? And now what am I supposed to say as this person who works here, who these are my values, but this is what I'm being told I'm supposed to say.
Damn.
So
I will say just this one thing, and I will say it as appropriately as I can on the It Gets Better Twitch channel. As a lesbian, keeping me with other women, if as a child, as an adult, is not going to
it doesn't solve the problem
that you want.
Right.
If anything, you're doing me a favor. Thank you.
No, I mean, I had to talk to them about that, because we would have what to me, maybe only because I was the only queer one, were obvious partners trying to room together. And there was no like fear of that, but there was so much fear of like a teenage pregnancy happening, even though like
straights too,
so I just like, anyways, I'm so sorry, Toast, I derailed your thought process, but you made me vibrate.
But that was like the thing that it stuck with me for even after I ended up leaving that summer camp, that there was support for that notion of having like a non-binary cabin within that camp, and like figuring out like we had showers that like they were boys showers and girl showers, and they weren't all like community showers, they all had like their own little curtains and stuff like that, but like and like you were changing inside the shower, but there was like that question of like, is that inappropriate? And for a difference between me and B's camp is that B was working with high school students who the showers would like, they were like college showers.
Ours were curtains too, unfortunately.
But I was working with like 9-year-olds, right? And like, so people were asking the question about age and stuff like that, like 9 to like 16 for the most part. And so, it stuck with me when I left that camp, that there was lots of talk, no action, not willing to make that fundamental change for something that was incredibly important and continues to. We had trans counselors, and basically we were asking them like, do you want to be on boy side or girl side this week? And we had one counselor who literally didn't care and went wherever they were needed. And it was delightful as a person who was managing staff, but probably confusing for kids, the other staff at some points. And like, they were all very accepting, but like, were like, it was like off-putting a little bit that there wasn't just like a place like they could have been the head counselor of the trans cabinet. It would have been beautiful, There's
like no actual deep changes or conversations being had, just kind of like surface level appeasement, like what can we do to make this individual person happy, rather than putting up systems. Be willing
to get messy. Your things are going to get messed up. They are not going to be as clean and efficient as to what you've developed now. But being willing to get messy and like actually do work that is so incredibly important amplifies, like shouts to the world that you are an inclusive organization, company.
Because I think it was interesting, because I think a lot of times they think that they're like, I remember my boss often thinking like, oh, like my systems, they work so good, they've been working for the last however many years, but working for who? Like, it's working for you. It's convenient for you to have these like gendered situations, but how many queer students have gone through your program, and while they did benefit from it in certain ways, they felt exiled and uncomfortable in a lot of other ways, and you just didn't know, because not every kid feels comfortable coming up to you and telling you what you're doing wrong with your program. Although as the years went on, the kids got more and more confident, and I was always over here like, yep, I've been saying that, but you can say it too.
But you can't rely on that, right? Like you're working with teenagers. I had a 9-year-old that was like,
there's
a
a power differential, you know.
Like, oh, okay. And I was like, deal with that later, I guess. And then the next day, doesn't even remember saying it. I'm like, all right.
Oh,
that'll be.
Yeah, but also to like extend that to a company level too, like not expecting people to like just like believing the people, like especially because like at least in like my position, it's always like this very fun battle of like, we say, hey, we need to make the bereavement leave more inclusive because right now it doesn't include chosen families, which disproportionately affects LGBTQI plus folks, marginalized folks who don't have like a nuclear like family dynamic. And they're like, okay, but why? It's like, okay, but why do you need us to like write like
justify
3 pages
everything
worth of research to justify it? Yeah. And so I think that's a lot of like a big thing that a lot of companies do, where it's just like, okay, we need this justification, so now you're going to put in all this labor that we're not paying for. And it's like, just listen to the employees who are affected by this and like believe it rather than needing an explanation for it.
You're also going to have to, you're going to have to be ready to deal with the people who, to deal with the fact that people are going to come out of the woodworks that you did not realize had bias. Like, if you're ready to make that messy change, like we talked a lot about, my boss was always like, oh, but the parents. I'm like, yeah, you're going to have to be ready to fight conservative parents who are going to be mad if we make this decision. Like, yes, you are correct. That is going to be a problem. But that's like work that we need to do. We can't just like pretend it's not happening because you don't want to deal with the consequences of your actions, you know?
And also not at the detriment to your trans students. Like,
yeah.
So sorry. The parents can be mad, but the trans students see safety, so we're gonna like, we're gonna go that direction.
Like, why are we prioritizing the safety? Because like there was always fear that other kids would get pulled out of the program. I'd be like, that'd be very unfortunate. But why is the safety of the students of conservative parents more of a concern than the students who actually need our help and protection, which is our queer students?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, the obvious answer would be it's going to be a financial hit, right? Yeah. But I feel like at the end of the day, like, again, if you have the ability to and you are safe enough to do it, the risk is worth it. I do this all the time, every single day. You think I want to be outside during a pandemic, but my title is literally Director of Community Organizing. So I'm in the community making sure that queer folks feel heard and empowered to do what they want to do. I think that my life is worth the risk because we are literally losing our lives just for existing. So if I have the privilege to make people feel safe at the risk of possibly getting COVID, this is the first time I'm saying this and I should probably tweet it, I'm going to take that risk for our community. So
check out Ace's Twitter later.
Actually, yes, mods, can we give some more shout outs for our folks on the panel today? I know we got them earlier in stream, but we do only have like 3 minutes left, so that'll probably be it. We zoomed past, we zoomed by. I think we can get the mods will do some shout outs, and if y'all like what you see here, make sure you follow these folks over on their own platforms, and not just Twitch, because folks do a lot of amazing work everywhere. So if you have the spoons to kind of click all those buttons, give them some love, see what they're up to, support their work, that would be rad. That would be very rad. Thank you all for being here.
I was not nervous about how much time we had. I was like, hey, we're gonna be chatty. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's true. I shouldn't be nervous, I guess, but sometimes I don't know. Head empty. I'm a very much like a planner. So if I run out of things to say, it is like head empty, no thoughts. I have nothing else. I'm looking at you like.
What's your zodiac sign?
I'm a Taurus.
That's why.
Taurus friends, yeah.
Earth signs.
So, It's
I once did a presentation and ended it 40 minutes early, and I was like, this is going to go interesting. And then managed to fill the rest of the time.
That's
completely.
It's funny because like I stream, so obviously you would think that I can just like spew, but like when I'm gaming, I can just always lean back on talking about what I'm doing in game. But if I'm just like it's just my face, then there's not.
I mean, also you plan your streams, like what you're going to say in your streams as well. Be like you write down like conversation points of what you want to mention.
It's true, but sometimes I run out of things. I do.
Because that way you forget.
I do like little.
They like write down like, oh, we went out to like this particular brunch place on Saturday.
And then I have like a story to tell them.
Are you serious? Maybe that's why.
A bullet point.
Oh, that's so.
I'm gonna come back to content creation. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do just that. Because maybe that's why I quit.
I have the worst memory, so I just need like little things to like. If I'm going silent, I'm just gonna like, oh, I'm gonna tell you about this.
If it's been days between your last stream as well, for sure. Like when I go and stream, I always just talk about what I did that day, and that doesn't take very long. Respectfully, I live a pretty chill life.
Like I go to work and then go to sleep, and I got cats. That's all I got.
Fair enough. All right, gamers. I think that's it for us. Thank you all for being here. Thank everybody in chat as well. I'm not just talking to the speakers. Obviously, they were the star of the show, but you know, star of the show that's being watched by you all. So thank you for being here. And you know, this is my first of 6 up and coming panels. Five more. So there'll be 5 more panels with other lovely humans talking about other queer issues. So I will see you all again soon. Bye.
Toodaloo.